Most European languages employ the use of diacritics, which are markings added to a letter to indicate changes in vowels, stresses on syllables, or other adjustments to letter sounds. For example, in French, the acute accent is used to distinguish de from day, and the umlaut in German elongates a vowel sound where o becomes ö, u becomes ö, and a becomes er. So what about English? We often see accents above French loanwords, such as in café, fiancé, and crêpe. But what about words not taken from other languages? Does English have any natural diacritics of its own? Romance and Germanic languages, including English, are largely based on the Latin alphabet. Classical Latin was written without diacritics, using an alphabet of 23 letters. Since Latin had a fairly consistent match between its orthography and phonology, there was little need for any modifying marks in the letters. Also, as more ancient languages were largely spoken by the average person and only written and read by the educated, clarity in pronunciation was less necessary. As descendant languages developed and letters began to represent a wider range of sounds, diacritics were introduced to clarify pronunciations, especially where one letter alone could represent multiple sounds. In Anglo-Saxon England, Old English was initially written with a runic alphabet. The Latin alphabet was introduced over the 6th and 7th centuries, but there were sounds present in Old English that weren't represented in Latin. Instead of adding diacritics to letters, there were extra letters added from the old runic alphabet, like the thorn for th and the eth for th. Reconstructions of Old English often show a macron over certain letters, but this is for clarity of sounds for modern readers and didn't appear in contemporary writings. Diacritics would have only appeared in writing after the Norman invasion, when many Norman French words were introduced into English, although many of these would have reverted to more English spellings, such as forêt becoming forest. At this time, many such reversions were down to adherence to Latin as the model language. The invention of the printing press in 1476, or rather its use over the next few hundred years, had the effect of standardizing spellings to a certain point, since consistency in typesetting was valued over any phonetic accuracy. This, combined with the Great Vowel Shift, where the pronunciations of English vowels changed substantially, meant that while orthography was becoming standardized, phonology was not. As a result, many English words have spellings that do not necessarily reflect their pronunciation. In some ways, the need for diacritics has been fulfilled with the use of digraphs, trigraphs, and quadgraphs, combinations of 2, 3, or 4 letters to represent one single sound. For example, the vowel in red is short, but combined with an A makes a long vowel in read. However, this still presents problems, as this word is its homograph, and the word read is its homophone. Perhaps English should adopt diacritics to help with pronunciations. Many European countries have institutions to govern their language, reforming spelling rules when necessary. The oldest of these is the Académie Française, established in 1635. There is no equivalent for the English language beyond dictionaries and style guides, but there are bodies to govern the Celtic languages in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. So is it the case that English only uses diacritics for loanwords? There are in fact several special case scenarios where diacritics are utilised, though they are becoming more obsolete. In poetic contexts, where certain words should be pronounced with an extra syllable, an acute accent is often used, turning blessed into blessed. In other words, where there might be confusion between syllables, a diaeresis is sometimes used to indicate the vowel starting a new syllable. Examples include re-elect, cooperation, and zoology. The diaeresis is identical in appearance to the umlaut, but serves a different function. Most writers do not use this, either choosing to omit it entirely or use a hyphen. However, some uses of diaeresis are more common, in words like Noël, naïve, and the names Chloë and Zoe. So while English does technically use diacritics, its uses are limited to archaic systems or representations of loanwords, mostly of French origin. Even these are largely omitted, although their retention does aid clarity, for example in the use of resume versus resume. Will this always be the case? While English does not have an institute to govern its standards, there have been official reforms in the language, most notably in the USA. The educator Noah Webster called for spelling reform and published spelling books himself with more phonetic spellings in them, such as colour, centre, and theatre. Further reforms, even in the UK, are possible, if not necessarily likely. If reform were to happen, diacritics would certainly be an option in creating further clarity in the English language and its spelling.